I remember we were in Argentina and we just had a couple of friends from New Zealand come out and ride with us for a couple of weeks. And we were in a city called Mendoza. We stopped there for a week so I could do a bit of work, do a bit of writing and catch up on the blog and that sort of stuff. And it was starting to kind of be a bit more present in the media. And I remember as our friends were going home, Hannah and I were sort of talking about how we wouldn't want to be going through certain international airports at that moment. So it was already something that we were kind of cognizant of and starting to think about a little bit. But at that time, Latin America was untouched by the virus as far as we knew. And it seemed so far away from what was starting to develop. And, you know, Wuhan was on lockdown and I think it was just starting to really, you know, take a grip in Italy, in northern Italy. But otherwise, we felt so far away from it.
So, as a quick aside, did you have any Malbec while you were in Mendoza?
Of course.
Because that is one of my favorite regions for wine in the world. I love Malbec.
The wine there was fantastic, and it really was a kind of we'd spent a lot of time at high altitude and in remote desert regions before we got to Mendoza, and so kind of rolled into the city and there were trees and food and shops and heaps of people, and in fact an amazing food and culinary culture there. So many good restaurants and kind of affordable too, even for us. So we had a really nice time there. It was a good break from the arid high altitude energy kind of sapping places that we'd been in for so long since we'd really been in Peru.
Right. And from Argentina, well, prior to reaching Argentina, you had kind of skipped ahead a little bit and done a segment. And then once you get back to Chile, whenever COVID passes, and you'll actually finish the route and close the gap.
Yeah, that's right. So we basically crossed back over the Andes from Mendoza across to Santiago, following like these little horse tracks. It was an amazing experience in itself. A really great journey for a week, crossing remote Andes, high altitude again, and fantastic single track riding. Really good little adventure, that one. We arrived in Santiago and we knew that Patagonia is kind of time, that which is the southernmost part of Chile and Argentina, is kind of time critical in terms of getting through there before winter. And as a photographer, I wanted to be there during the optimum season to shoot, during autumn, basically, when the trees turn a really nice color and it's a bit quieter. It's colder, but it's a really nice time of the year to be there. And so we decided to actually catch a bus south from Santiago to Puerto Montt and then resume riding. And then, yeah, as you say, we were going to close that gap later. So the original plan had been to ride down through Patagonia through the fall, through autumn, and then actually winter over there for a few months, probably back in Bariloche in Argentina, and then close that gap back to Santiago. So we've probably got about 2,500 kilometers of riding to do once we can go back there to complete the journey.
Okay.
But who knows when that's going to be.
Yeah. So we have kind of got a grand overview of the whole route, including sidetracks and stops and skips and jumps. And now I really want to get into a little bit of the logistics of it, talking about your bike, the repairs that you had to make, any kind of food you brought, gear, all of this stuff that people kind of don't think about outside of the actual act of biking, but what is, every part of your day.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, they're questions people often have. So, and it can fill in the blanks. It can help people think about planning their own trip. And
yeah, well, I guess first question is kind of what Bob already asked. It sounds like you spent a lot of time sleeping in tents.
Yep.
How much weight did you carry on any given day on your bikes?
I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head our overall load on the bike, actually, but our ethos is to carry as little as possible. If you're running a light load on the bike, then you're more agile. it opens up more options. If you're riding a heavy bike with all this gear and bells and whistles and the kitchen sink and all that sort of thing, it reduces your options in terms of where you can choose to go. And you tend to have to stick to, say, good quality gravel roads or paved highways.
Okay.
We wanted to be able to ride single track, 4-wheel drive tracks, sometimes no track at all, and just go cross country.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
The bike that you have in your photos are quite burly, to say the least.
Yeah, they are burly. Yeah. They're kind of specialist for purpose. So,
Not built for speed.
Sorry, go ahead.
Not built for speed.
Not well. They're light. The frames are light. Yeah, they're built for. They're pretty versatile. So if you run like lighter wheels on them, then they're super fast bikes.
Okay.
Otso Vortex. It's a fully carbon frame, super stiff in terms of being able to cope with the load and being efficient when you're hill climbing. But carbon has got certain benefits in terms of being able to absorb a bit of road shock and being really comfortable. So
yeah,
I can go on a bit more about how we set the bikes up, but yeah, being light is for us was the most important thing. So the bare minimum of clothing, the bare minimum of food, only as much as we needed for any given period of time until we could get to the next resupply.
And did you cook often on like a little pilot stove?
The journey kind of had some different phases, I suppose. Like when we started out in Alaska, all the way down through the United States, or through Canada and the United States, we were mostly cooking, mostly camping. And then in Mexico and Central America, and to some extent Colombia, we were more often staying in, guest houses, cheap little local hotels, or asking people if we could just camp somewhere. And that was because of the reputation those countries have. We were a little more cautious about camping and where we chose to camp. So it's kind of, you want to do it. And also those countries are so developed in terms of agriculture and they're more populated. So it's harder to find quiet places. But then once you get into Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, they're bigger countries and they're much more sparsely populated and there's no fences or anything. So it's much, much easier to go and wild camp. So that's what we did most of the time in those countries. And that also included cooking for ourselves, just on a very basic stove setup. Yeah.
When you say wild camp too, I really, if for everybody listening to this, they have to go to your website to put this trip into context because your photos are beautiful. You did a great job.
Oh my God, yeah.
Experience. And it's some of these pictures, you're just so isolated. You're in the middle of nowhere as whatever to the definition. It's really, you did a great job of kind of bringing the viewer along on this trip.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, one of the times I'm happiest is when I'm standing, on a pass or a ridge line or a mountain somewhere and there's nothing else man-made visible.
Yeah.
That's got to feel so cool.
Kind of drive to be in, and it's a kind of an angle or a style with my photography too, is to try and present the world in the most natural way that I can. And they're the kind of places we like to try and seek out on the bicycle.
As far as the night sky goes, have you ever had a darker night sky than you did in maybe Argentina or anywhere in South America?
There's actually some what are they called? There's some reserves for that sort
designated
of thing.
Dark sky.
Reserves. That's right. So places where there's a minimum of light pollution, so you get optimum clarity in the night sky. Yeah, Argentina was remarkable for that because we spent so much time at high altitude there, up on the Puna de Atacama, which is the high volcanic region that straddles the Andes between the two countries. So we were often at an average elevation around sort of between 10 and 12,000 feet. And so you're high, so the air clarity is incredible and there's no light pollution at all. So the sky looked mind-blowing. Yeah.
I've never seen the sky like that in my life.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's so cool.
So
Yeah.
I want to continue our discussion on this gear because I'm curious. when you set off, I assume you just had a set amount of clothing. Did you have to buy any new clothing for the changing seasons, or did you have everything with you?
Yeah, it's in keeping with that kind of ethos of carrying as little as possible. We chopped and changed with clothing. So if it was going to be cold, we carried cold weather equipment. And if we knew we were going to be in the tropics for months at a time, then we either sent that stuff back home or we sent it ahead.
Hmm.
So we spent a bit of money on courier services and organising logistics so that we could move gear around. But we were also fortunate to be sponsored by both Big Agnes and by Kathmandu.
Hmm.
Kathmandu in particular provided us with clothing.
Okay,
So
that's nice.
after we'd finished our journey through the tropics, but when we got to Colombia, we were able to pick up some down jackets and rainwear and that sort of warm gloves and so on from Kathmandu, which got us through the Andes. Yeah, but I mean, we started off up in Alaska on the 6th of June, 2016, which is midsummer,
Hmm.
but it was below freeze. The average temperature was -3 Celsius. So it was
In the
pretty cold.
summer.
Yeah. So we had burly winter weight down jackets and big gloves and, equipment for full, Arctic storms, basically.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most exposed places that we rode on the journey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how about bathroom situation?
You mean personal hygiene or
The whole thing, yeah.
The world is his toilet.
we would carry like a little sliver of soap and no deodorants or anything. I mean, we'd carry a toothbrush, toothpaste. Again, the bare minimum. I mean, in fact, we'd even cut our toothbrush handles off so that it would pack more easily. Not
All
to
right.
save weight. We're not quite that crazy, but
Yeah.
just so it packs more easily on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that stuff is a bare minimum. You don't really need it. I mean, the body actually starts to kind of equalize. If you don't wash for a week, you don't actually get that smelly. It's the clothes that get a bit smelly. So we tend to try and wear merino rather than anything synthetic,
Ah,
because you can
okay.
wear that for. I mean, the longest I've worn a merino top without washing was probably 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not because I mean, I could have washed it if I wanted to, but water was at a absolute minimum, and that's how long we were between towns. So
Mm.
Wow.
yeah.
Did you ever wash in a natural body of water?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
lake, rivers, for
Mhm.
sure. Not as much as you'd maybe imagine, because most of the time it's so cold. But those times, like I remember in Canada, coming through there in the summer, just about every night we'd camp by a lake and jump in the lake at the end of the day. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit in South America, but Patagonia was good for that too.
Okay. And when you guys tracked your whole trip via GPS and you were looking at maps as you were going, did you have like a portable charger or a solar charger? Or did you only charge up at towns?
Yeah, we record every single day on a Garmin GPS that we ride so that we can have the exact route that we've ridden to share with other people, because we document the journey as we go. Like if we ride a particularly cool section for a week or just a couple of days, then we'll actually write that up and put it on Ride with GPS with links on our website.
Okay.
So people can actually download the track, and it's annotated with little waypoints and bits of information for people so they can find out where to get water or where to camp and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's very cool.
So we have that stuff available on the site.